Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It is Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan here for another Inside the Birds. And we are at that point in the season where the Eagles are done with all of their camps, their mandatory camp, their spring camp, OTAs, all that, and they're off for a couple weeks until training camp will start. July 22nd, I believe, is the report date. So we've got a couple of weeks before the Eagles are back and football is in full gear. And then we will move Adam to season 8. Can you believe that? Season 8 of Inside the Birds.
Wow.
How about that?
Yeah. Spring of 2018 is when we first started doing shows. Wow.
Yeah, pretty amazing. So really proud of where we've been able to bring Inside the Birds to and the level that we're at. And look, so this is a part of the time where we really start to dissect the Eagles and also look to the future. We did this last year, and this is a really interesting series that we do where we look at the roster from not only now, but the future. What will the Eagles look like beyond 2000? Well, in 2026 and beyond, given what their contracts are. It's sort of like how we do the contract episode, but we don't necessarily get into the numbers as much as what our expectations and what we know of how long they're going to be around.
That's the point, because you wonder, what will this thing look like? Can they make another run, not just this year in 25, but 26, 27, well, in 28? If you have these guys together, yeah, the better chance that you have. And that's why, really starting with Joe Banner, who really decided this was the way they're going to build their roster, is extend guys early. And how he's done it, not only has he done it, he's done it better than anyone in the National Football League. They just continue to do this. It's very rare, like the Milton Williams, him signing that mega deal with New England, like that. It's very rare they let a super talented player walk. But it is what it is, because it's a little different this time in that they have so many guys they have to pay. They're paying now. Then they have guys that are coming up. They're looking at that, and that's certainly a part of why Milton's not coming back. They tried, by the way. They did try to re-sign him during the regular season pretty hard, but Milton's bet on himself smartly, and he got paid in a big way.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that is going to stick out while we do this series, both on offense and especially on defense, is that over the last few years, the Eagles have talked for a long time since I've been covering them, Adam, about being really hardcore draft and develop team. And they used to talk it, but not walk it. They have become a far more draft and develop team than they were, say, late Andy Reid era, early Chip, all that stuff, when Howie first took over. And when we go through the offense here, especially the O-line, right, and then we get into defense in the next episode, you're going to see just how homegrown the Eagles have become. I'm actually doing a project on this too for Philly Voice. I'll have a story out, especially if you look at the rosters of the defense, especially of the Super Bowl teams from 2017, 2022, last year's, of course, and then this upcoming roster, you'll start to see the team has become more and more and more homegrown, draft and develop, which is a good thing. You want that. That is what every organization strives to be. It's something that the Eagles, I think you would probably agree with me on this. They used to say they want to be and try to be, but then there were times they went too crazy in free agency with the dream team, and there were times draft picks didn't work out, so they couldn't redraft and develop. But they've really started over the last few years to use free agency as a tool, an important one, Saquon Barkley, but become way more reliant on retaining and developing their young talent.
They're going to the so-called old school way is you build your roster through the draft, you supplement through free agency, and boy, they're really doing that. And as a matter of fact, they have the youngest defense in the National Football League, which is a good thing. Offensively, they're still pretty young. Not a lot of old in the tooth guys, like the Jason Peters guy, other than obviously Lane Johnson. But like when Jason Peters was here, they also had a bunch of veterans. Not like that anymore. It's pretty interesting the way that they've done this. And as we get through the show today on offense, you'll see, though, this has a chance to be pretty good on offense for several years because of the way that they've got these guys signed.
Agreed. And then they have, as we'll get into, they have some options and potential maneuverability if these players that they drafted continue to do well, that will serve them well, especially at one position in particular, that we will get into. I do want to tease the fact that I know that right around mid-July, end of July in the past, we have done a comprehensive NFC East preview series with Greg Cosell, where we've had Greg on to break down the tape of, and then not only break down the tape of the year past, but also forecast a little bit with the free agent additions and the draft of what each NFC East team will look like. We do a 4-part series every summer, and that one will be starting next week. So we're going to get through this week, and the start of next week we'll come out with the first 2, and then the week after we'll finish off the next 2. So lots of great Greg Cosell content coming your way on Inside the Birds this summer, which we're always excited about. All right, so why don't we get into the crux of this? Let's start at quarterback. We're going to look at the Eagles' future roster, 2026, but also beyond. And Adam, this is the position where I think the Eagles, and things still have to happen, but where they've positioned themselves well as far as being stocked for now, but also giving themselves maneuverability, optionality going forward. Because we know Jalen Hurts is a starting quarterback. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's a Super Bowl MVP. He's your starter. There's no question about it. But the promotion now of Tanner McKee to number 2 quarterback, which means he's probably going to play a little bit this year, because the backup quarterback has had to play each year for the last 3 or 4 years with Jalen Hurts. He hasn't had major injuries, but he's had enough to miss a game here and there. So if Tanner McKee in his 4th year, right, has to play a few games and looks as good as he did last year when he played in the season finale, or just continues to impress people, that gives the Eagles a pretty nice chip going forward as to whether or not they want to maybe trade him, or if something bad happens with Hurts or he gets injured and they need a different quarterback. I mean, that's all. The point is, between Hurts and what they might have in McKee, and then McCord even down the road, it's a pretty good setup for the Eagles.
It is. It is. It's and they didn't know this 2 years ago that McKee would be their future number 2. I don't think anyone knew that. Right. In fact, the training camp one special, the 2 preseason games were eye-opening. That kept them on the roster. They weren't going to risk him through waivers to get to the practice squad. So this is a great story of development. I mean, he's, as you and I both know, we've talked to a bunch of teams that really know about him. Well, it's kind of funny. Universally, this is a player that not a lot of teams like for that draft in 2023.
Right.
Because, he's a tall guy, didn't have very good pocket mobility, processed okay, not a very good athlete, though.
Right.
You were kind of trying to figure out what is he, and that's why he dropped the 6th round, and he was a little bit older.
Yep.
And boy, this kid could spin it. Any reporter who's been in practice knows this, and we're not telling them, if they're listening, what they need to know. They know this because they've seen it in practice, and he's been a real good story of development. So much so that they were looking to move Kenny Pickett. They were able to move him to Cleveland, and McKee is the guy, and he is signed through 2026. By the way,
so there's 3 things, right, that you and I talked to a ton of NFL personnel, a lot of college scouts, especially during the draft series and draft time. And the 3 things that we know that college scouts in particular, but even more so, even NFL personnel executives, when they go to the draft, is experience, production, and durability. Those are 3 huge factors. And when you look at McKee, he's only a 2-year starter. I believe he dealt with an injury at one point, or he was either that, or he just, the lack of athleticism really hurt him. He was kind of considered a little bit of a statue, even though we've learned that he's not. And the experience, production experience, he'd only started 2 years, and he really played on an underwhelming Stanford offense. So his numbers don't wow you, but that's how players slip through the cracks, because he's clearly got a great arm, and we've seen him be able to dissect defenses pretty well. So that's what make this pick one of those guys who just fell through the cracks and didn't have all of those criteria that guys look for, and it didn't matter because he was actually a really good quarterback.
Yeah, he's 25. Okay, he turns 26 in April. Mm-hmm. He was on a Mormon mission, so that's why he's a little bit older. Right. But in fact, my lot calls him the Mormon missile, which you gotta love. So the cool thing, so now again, it depends if they want to wind up trading him, and a lot of that happens. Part of that's going to be Kyle McCord, how he develops as a backup, assuming he makes the team as their 3rd quarterback. and what they think they could get from McKee. I know people are trying to speculate, well, Eagles might move for a third round pick. I would argue because this kid is so gifted. Now I know he's barely played, so that's you want to get maximum value for him. He has the Giants game. You want more tape than that, but you also have the preseason. That counts.
Yep.
The last 2 preseasons. You also don't forget about that tape. Every team gets access to preseason tape.
Right.
So let's not forget about that. And McCord, by the way, signed through 2028. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is signed through 2026. If you would have told me like the start of the spring, would they keep 3 quarterbacks? I would have said probably not. But now with McCord on the team, and then with McKee signed through 2026, yeah, I mean, they certainly could keep 3 quarterbacks, and 4 definitely not, but 3 for sure. That's absolutely in the cards.
Yeah, yeah. And if the Eagles are fortunate enough to hit on McCord and also McKee, they're going to be in a great position. They're going to have trade commodities. I mean, they're going to have good backup quarterbacks if they do trade one of them, and the other one can come in and still win games for you. If that is the case, the Eagles are going to be in a really good spot for years to come. Remember, folks who are old enough to remember, the Eagles got a 2nd-round pick for AJ Feely. Okay.
And he played well, by the way. When he
played well, you can understand why. But that's my point, Adam, is all it takes is a young quarterback to get in there in a good environment and play well, because you know how quarterback starved the league is, to get the league's attention. So the Eagles will be in a good spot if both of their backup quarterbacks look good when they get in there.
Yeah, and honestly,
thank you for Cobb, by the way. They traded Cobb for like a 2nd-round pick in DRC, right?
DRC, yes. I don't know. I'd have to look up. I don't know if they got a 2nd-round pick. You might be right. I'd have to look it up. But Feely got a 2nd-round pick. Now, again, just to finish us off, certainly worth a 3rd, McKee, because of the body type. It's not like he's 30. I mean, quarterbacks can play easily late into the 30s if they don't get hurt in today's NFL. So, yeah, I would say minimum of 3rd. If I'm the Eagles, I don't think I wouldn't do it for a 3rd. I wouldn't, because this league. I mean, you look at some of the crap from the backup quarterbacks that are out there, and where these clubs can't develop quarterbacks. In fact, they're struggling with guys that they've drafted. Some of these teams, McKee's just as talented as a lot of these guys.
Yeah,
he's kind of a legend with the Eagles. I mean, it's just kind of funny. You talk to people who used to work for the Eagles, and they know it. It's one of these things where you go, is he as good as people think he really is, or they think he is, or other teams do? Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah. I just looked it up to confirm. They got a 2nd-round pick and Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie for Cobb. So they got a 2nd-round pick and a starting corner for a guy who's a backup quarterback. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Unbelievable. All right. So the Eagles are in good hands at the quarterback position. Running back position, really good hands. It's interesting, though. I wrote a story for Philly Voice. I don't know if you saw it on Friday about how the odds were stacked against Saquon Barkley to come close to 2,000 yards again. I think if there's ever a candidate to do it, it would be Saquon in this environment, because he's in great shape. He has a great offensive line. He's great, obviously, coaching staff and culture and playmakers around him. But there's only been 9 guys to run for 2,000 yards before. He was the 9th, and none of the other 8 ever got there again. And then I did a little bit of a look on what was the year like after these guys ran for 2,000 yards, and some of them were really much lower than you would think. Like Eric Dickerson. Yeah, a lot of them got hurt, right? Eric Dickerson ran for 21:05, and then the next season was 12:34. Adrian Peterson, 2,097. Next season, 12:66. Jamal Lewis, 2,066 yards. The next season, 1,006 yards. That's a negative of 1,060 yards. So it's, and so forth and so on. In fact, none of them had obviously more, because nobody's ever done it twice. But the best one was Chris Johnson getting 1,364 yards in 2010 after he got 2,006. That's still minus 642 yards from the year before. So the point I'm trying to make is their Eagles are in great hands, and Barkley's going to be fine as long as he's healthy. But history says he's either not going to be healthy or they're going to be coming after him. It's just really hard to duplicate that.
Yeah, and this is two things I'm going to add to this. These are pretty amazing numbers I have here. So Barkley last season had 345 carries, right? His previous high was 295. And then 436 if you add the playoffs, and 482 touches if you go through the playoffs. That's
right.
Rushes and receptions. That's insane. Derrick Henry never had more than 396 carries through the playoffs in any season. Okay. Hall of Famer Jerome Bettis, great football player, right? Never had anywhere close to that kind of usage. So that's the concern here, is that he wears down. And this is why I've been sort of on a mission that the Eagles have to be really smart, because they're certainly capable of making another run. The guts of this roster is really good, but to do it, they got to have Barkley, and he keeps you on schedule when the passing game's not going well, which we know at times last season wasn't. He kept everything on schedule, and whether it's Will Shipley, or somebody else, they got to figure out a way here to move the football with AJ Dillon. If he makes a team, they have, and if he wins the number 2 job, fine. But there's no reason to overwork Barkley when they've got a big lead, and that this is going to be interesting to see how Sirianni and Patullo handle this situation with Jamal Singleton, the running backs coach.
Let me ask you this question. So Barkley had 378 touches last year between his carries and his receptions. Do you anticipate him getting to 375 touches this year?
But now again, that's
I'll even give you this. He stays healthy for 17 games. Does he still get to 375 touches?
It's a great question. While
you think about that, I'll let you in on this fact. One. All right. Who do you think the last player in NFL history was to have 375 touches in back-to-back year, or more touches in back-to-back years?
I have no idea.
Steven Jackson of the St. Louis Rams.
For landing the Rams.
2009 and 2010. So we're going on 15 years for the last time a player was able to handle that kind of a workload. Now, he handled it well, Steven Jackson. He had really good years. In fact, I'm a little surprised looking at his numbers that maybe he doesn't get Hall of Fame consideration, but maybe he will.
He might. Actually, he might.
Sure. Yeah, he might. Sure. He might. He probably should. But if Barkley stays healthy, there's really no reason not to give him the ball that many times, right? Because he's your best overall weapon. But it's been a long, long time since someone's been able to handle that workload.
482 touches Barkley had last season.
Right, because I don't think Jackson had made the playoffs both of those years, or he may not have made either of those years. So he didn't have the added touches.
That's it. And that now I know touches, it's the receptions, you take less contact.
Hey, not Barkley though. He caught those balls and he wasn't catching them and then going right out of bounds. He was taking some contact.
No, but you don't have as many guys converging typically. But the bottom line is it's still a ton of work. And I know he said he felt great after the season, but it's just something to look for this season. I'm very curious how they've never been in a situation like this coaching staff, because they've never really been a running team until last year.
Right.
In fact, we'd have to go back and look. We know Brian Westbrook, there were a couple years that he averaged well over 20 touches per game. In fact, I remember the last time we spoke to him on our show, we talked about that. How to build his body up. But this is going to be interesting to see how they do it.
So he signed through 2028, which means he has this year and theoretically 3 more years after. And it would be great for the Eagles if he was that kind of guy who was, all pro for 4 more years. But they do have Will Shipley. I think Shipley's a good candidate just based on our conversation about he's making sure Barkley's not overworked. Shipley's a good candidate to see a lot more time and maybe be a breakout player. But it does make you wonder about the future. That's what the point of the show is about. What is the future of this position? Is it Barkley for the next 5 years? That's going to be tough. I think everybody would love to see it. It would be great if he could hold up. That's an unanswerable question as of now. But I think what the Eagles have shown you over the last few years, Adam, is they can win with a Barkley, or they can win like they did in 2017 with a committee, as long as they're always committed to having a really good offensive line.
which they're always going to have. But with Barkley, it's 27 and 28 is that's when you start looking at based on structure, what they can get out of it. When that's kind of because he'll be closing in on 30, where you go, boy, it would be really nice if they had someone behind him who they drafted who could potentially start working their way in to get a significant role. And that's Shipley, who's signed through 2027. And we're going to see that's something we're going to look at training camp. He's got to certainly be on the team. Then the question is, can he be filling out for the 2 job, and what kind of volume could he handle? That's something they'll learn. But offensive line, though, there's certainly, and we'll talk about that later. But offensive line wise, they've done a really good job of building it the right way, which is through the draft.
Yeah, definitely. And you can definitely say with all the names that beyond Barkley and Shipley, not sure if we know the future of that position, just because A.J. Dillon's a 1 year, Keelan Robinson claimed off waivers, Lou Nichols has already been cut a few times, and then they have a couple of rookie free agents who are just trying to make the team. So will be interesting to see how Barkley continues to stay healthy and progress throughout the years.
Yeah, one thing.
Yeah,
real quick. The undrafted free agent rookies they get 3-year deals. Robinson signed through 27, Nichols through 26.
Right. All right. So the next position is still running back, but it's a little bit of variation. Fullback, Ben Van Sumeren. And I gotta tell you, I feel in some small way that it is so intentional that they moved him for the fullback, not just to play fullback, but because they have a plan for him to really be a multi-dimensional fullback. We know about his hands. He supposedly has some of the best hands on the team. We know he's played running back before in college. And Adam, I just get this feeling that I'm not going to go all the way to Kyle Juszczyk because I don't know if there's enough room in the offense for a guy like that. But I do think that they're just not moving him to fullback to go out there and block for Saquon. I think they want to use him in a very creative offensive way.
Absolutely. We know he's got excellent hands, very good athlete. And it is interesting if they're going to keep him. They moved him from linebacker. Boy, they could use another inside backer, but no longer he's on offense. And then he was coming off this major knee injury, but we saw him doing some stuff in OTA. So we'll see kind of how they use him in training camp. And Hurts did throw. He had a willingness to check the ball down last season, and that's what Van Sumeren could be, one of those check down guys. We'll see, but he's an athlete.
Oh, he could maybe even be a little Texas route guy. I mean, he could be a misdirection guy. Remember, he's a fantastic athlete. So I'm with you. Like, why would you deprive yourself of another good inside linebacker when you need those if you didn't have a really good plan for this guy by moving him to fullback? So I'm very, very fascinated to see that. And he's on he basically enters the last year of his deal. So this will be
it's actually a new deal. Yeah.
Right.
Well, what is he re-signed? He was an exclusive rights free agent. So he's on a 1 year
deal. Right. Yeah. All right. So wide receiver, there's a lot of names here, Adam. I mean, obviously people know AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are signed for a while. Brown through 2009, Smith through 2028. 28. I'm sorry, 2029 and 2028 for Smith. So that is the future. As long as these guys stay healthy, they're going to be there for quite a bit, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, with Brown, the question is, will he play out if he's healthy? Will he play into his 30s?
Right.
With the the Titans were worried about the knee issue, so it's held up. I mean, he's been pretty healthy here. I mean, he did have a knee injury here, but that was unrelated to what happened in Tennessee. So Smith through 28, Brown through 29. So your top 2 guys are signed for a minimum of 28. That's huge. Okay, that's this season, plus 3 more. That's huge. Then you look at the backups, right? Anais Smith through 27, Johnny Wilson through 27, Dotson through 25. So his contract's up. Danny Gray, by the way, Danny Gray signed through 26.
Right.
We'll be interested to see what he can do. We're excited about watching him this summer. Terrace Marshall on a 1-year deal, and Elijah Cooks through 26, who unfortunately was hurt in their offseason program, didn't really participate. So the only thing they really need to find out is who would be the future backups. Who could they? Johnny Wilson, yeah, he's a blocking receiver who could play on special teams. He does have a role. But man, you like to. I know they're not going to go heavy 11 personnel anymore. because of the way that their structure of their offense is. They didn't last year. But if somebody got hurt, you'd like to know who that guy could be for the future. Naismith is a guy I'll be very interested to see in training camp, what he looks like.
Big summer for him.
Yep.
Yeah. And Danny Gray, we've been talking about Danny Gray for quite a bit now. Big summer for him. And I think that's interesting that he's got 2 years, right? He's got this year and 2026. Yeah. So if you happen to get some kind of great breakout from him, you're fortunate you've still got him on the books for another year after that.
See, he's the guy, his pass targets, if he makes a team, will be minuscule, but he's capable of making a big play at any time. That's even if he has like 10 catches, who knows? He could have 2 or 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's how explosive the guy is.
Yeah, but I mean, again, I've said this name before, and people sometimes cringe, but like, Quez Watkins played a small but vital role that year. They made it to the Super Bowl with him being a field stretcher out of the slot position. I forgot how many passes he caught that year, but if you got that same, just took those numbers that Quez gave you that year and put them onto Danny Gray or anybody else, but really Danny Gray because he has the speed, then you've made out. You've done well. I mean, that guy was claimed off waivers, correct? Was he signed or claimed off waivers?
Danny Gray, I'll look up. By the way, Quez Watkins, that year, as you talked about, he had 33 receptions.
Yeah.
For it's interesting. He had 3 touchdowns, but for under 11 yards per catch.
Yeah, because he was a slot guy. He's really a deep threat who was miscast.
He is
a slot guy.
As we saw the first 2 years, he averaged over 15 yards per catch. It's just
right.
It's funny how that works out, but So what was the other thing you were asking?
Just basically the fact that I was wondering if I couldn't remember if the Eagles claimed him off waivers from the Niners or
Danny
just
Gray.
signed him as after he got waived.
Yeah, Danny Gray was released, but he was waived, and he passed the waivers unclaimed, and he signed to the Eagles practice squad week 2 last year.
Right.
And what happened was they might have got him like late August. He might have gotten some practice time, but the bottom line is he passed the waivers unclaimed, and he wound up being on the Eagles practice squad basically the entire season.
Right.
And they re-signed him for 2 years. So he's 26. This guy can flat out fly. I know Andrew DeCecco has gotten to know him. This guy's got a lot of confidence now. We'll see what happens.
That's right. All right, let's move on to tight end because we're talking about the future of positions. Is there a future tight end for the Philadelphia Eagles beyond 2025?
Yeah, we double checked this. There is one guy signed through 26.
Yeah.
So
doesn't mean he's going to be on the team though.
What's that?
Doesn't mean he's going to make the team.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, this guy's a long shot, but we're going to mention in a minute. Goddard's up, Calcaterra's up, EJ Jenkins is up, Granson up, Brian up, Nick Muse. They gave a little bit of guaranteed money. Cameron Lotz, who signed a 2-year deal, he's here through 26. If he makes the team, of course, he's a major long shot. Look, they keep 3 tight ends? Yes, they're not going to keep more than 3. So most likely, you never say never with Howie. He shocked us when he kept 7 defensive tackles to start 2023 season. Wasn't for long because they went up trading Kentavious Street to Atlanta, but nevertheless, never know. But it's unlikely they'll keep more than 3. They don't. It's the one position on offense they have no future. Really, they really don't, and that'll come in next year's draft most likely.
I wonder what the feasibility is of the Eagles having 3 entirely new tight ends in 2026. Not probable, but also not impossible. Like you got to think one of these guys, right, between Bryant and Granson and Jenkins or Calcaterra is going to earn his way back onto the team.
I was thinking that. I was thinking Harrison Bryant because he's got better versatility than Granson. And Calcaterra is very limited as a blocker, and Goddard turns 31 in January. So it's, how he was almost traded. So this is, but the good thing is though, this year with Goddard back and as much 12 personnel as they likely will play, it could look really interesting because 1 week it could be Goddard and Calcaterra. The next week it could be Granted, Goddard and Brian. They could just keep mixing and matching depending on the opponent. That's the cool thing is with Goddard back, you're not stuck. Now they've got a lot of possibilities at tight end.
Absolutely. It'll be fun. It'll be really interesting to see this position take shape, not only this year, but then into the future. All right, everybody. Did you miss Father's Day? I hope not. Father's Day was great. I hope everybody enjoyed their Father's Day. But if you still need a birthday gift or maybe even a late Father's Day gift to buy, we've got the perfect gift opportunity for you. And that is a membership to our friends at Stretch Zone. You can get it three ways. You can get the immediate e-card. You can go the traditional route. They'll get the card, they'll get the certificate in 5 to 6 days right to the recipient, or you can just stop in to the nearest location. And there are 13 locations in PA and New Jersey. And Adam, you'd love to tell them where you can go to Stretch Zone.
Yeah, Haverford, near Suburban Square, Devon, near the Whole Foods, Exton, ironically, near a Whole Foods. I have noticed that they when they get their locations, they're usually like around like a health club
Yes.
or Orange Fitness or all
Yeah.
these
They're not
whatever
next to
Orange
Buffalo
Theory.
Wild Wings or anything.
Yeah, right. Orange Theory. I mean, yeah. So Exton, yeah, it's near the mall there. South Philly, Washington Ave. I know you might see Dave Spadaro with the Eagles there.
Ooh.
Yep, Montgomery County, Elkins Park Plaza, that area, Upper Dublin, Dresser area off 611, Feasterville, and then Warrington's the new one, which opened a couple weeks ago in New Jersey, where you go in Cherry Hill, Mount Laurel, and Franklin Lakes, Northfield. If you're going down the shore in Princeton, New Jersey.
There you go. All right. Again, Stretch Zone and our friends that visit them at stretchzone.com. All right. Now, as we talk about the Eagles' future, Adam, and this is the position we get to where you don't really wonder about the future so much because the Eagles do an extremely good job of draft and development at this position and its offensive line, whether it's guard, whether it's tackle, whether it's center. We know it's the offensive position that they focus on most. We always wonder why other teams don't the way the Eagles do, because it certainly pays off for them. And when we look at the contracts and the players, almost all of them who have a future with the Eagles are drafted players. And then the ones who are more 1 year are the smart veterans that you just need to like fill some spots.
By the way, it's fun. You mentioned how you can't understand why other teams don't do it like the Eagles do. So I happened to talk to Joe Banner recently, and Joe, we were talking about this. He's just amazed. He just doesn't understand it, because a lot of teams do it from back to front instead of front to back like the Eagles do it on both sides of the football. But some do it partially, but they don't quite do it like the Eagles do. For whatever reason, and it's you study. I don't know. Teams look at each other, but it's like it doesn't sink in.
Right.
But let's get back to guard Dickerson with his recent extension signed through 28. Tyler Steen, who's the favorite, he hasn't won it yet. He needs the right guard job. He signed through 26. The backups, Kenyon Green, signed through 25. Matt Pryor coming back. He's a guard right tackle, signed through 25. Trevor Keegan, signed through 27. So the interior of their offensive line, if Steen wins it, they'll be together through 26, right? If not, they can look through the draft. Now, a tackle, based on contract structure, Lane Johnson signed through 27. Mailata through 28. So the tackle, so think about this, right? Dickerson through 28, Mailata through 28, Lane through 27. Kendall Lamb's on a 1-year deal. Darren Kennard's deal expires after the season. Miles Hinton and Cameron Williams, who will vie for jobs as backup tackles. Miles Hinton's a real important one because he can back up left or right tackle. He's signed through 28, but the guts of the offensive line, and then they're signed long term, and then you have Cam Jurgens, who's now signed through 2029 with his recent extension. So at least 4 of these guys are signed through 2027. Yet another reason why this thing has a chance to be together, this offense, totally, because they're signed long term. I mean, this is what the Eagles have done for over 30 years.
So if Tyler Steen wins the right guard job, that means the entire offensive line is a homegrown offensive line, all drafted picks by the Eagles from center to guard to tackle.
That's right.
If you think that, I know that I don't think people realize how special that is. I mean, that's really, really difficult. If you go back and look at some of the best offensive lines in Eagles history over the last 20, 30 years, because Andy really started this thing. Andy and Joe Banner and building through the trenches through Chip Kelly to now, some of their most elite offensive lines were never all homegrown. I mean, the Andy years had John Runyon. He was a huge free agent signing for them, right?
From Titan.
Yeah, from the Titans. And then Evan Mathis was a huge left
And
guard.
who knew?
Who knew that was coming? Jason
Yeah.
Peters, Hall of Famer, not homegrown. He was traded with the Buffalo Bills.
Good
And then
trade.
even in 2017, Brandon Brooks was a free agent signing from the Houston Texans. So they've always had great offensive lines, but never this homegrown before.
It's a
That is
good
a
point.
true
Yep.
testament. Yep.
I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, if you go through the years, they mixed and matched through free agency
Mm-hmm.
and the draft. But this is, if you really, so why have they taken this route? Well, part of it's how he's drafted much better. So they're not having to bring in, because what happens is, and we've seen this around the league, when you miss on draft picks, you cover it up by signing free agents. So you make trades. We know Howie's big on trading anyway, because if there are players they've liked from other teams that they've always had their eye on, sure, you could, or he's an opportunist. If something happened, like AJ Brown, right? It was a great opportunity, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but they also, because of what happened in the draft with Jalen Reagor, they had to do something. So, but the bottom line is, this thing is built so well through the draft here. And this is going to be our eighth season. It's very rare we look at them as being a drafted built team. It's just not the way things have been done here. But you're right, man. When you get into it, I mean, a lot of these guys who start are going to be their guys.
Right. Now, let's broaden the lens as we wrap this up to the entire offense. The entire offensive line, if Steen wins it, is homegrown. The quarterback is homegrown. The tight end is homegrown. The fullback would be homegrown. He was a rookie free agent signing of the Eagles. The Z receiver is homegrown. So we'll have to figure out who the number 3 or the slot. If Anaya Smith has this great camp and he's your slot, then yeah. But most likely we'll call Jahan Dotson. So only 2 of the 11, AJ Brown and Jahan Dotson, would be non-homegrown on an 3, and Saquon Barkley, of course, on an offense that is, considered one of the best in the league. And that's again, not only a testament to draft and develop, but even making good decisions when you're chasing a free agent like Saquon or making a trade like AJ Brown. It's worked out for them. They've been very good in their scouting process from draft to trade to free agency for the most part.
Yeah. The coaching helps too. That's the secret sauce of this whole thing.
Yep.
No question. You mentioned earlier, drafting, developing. It's really the way you want to do it. Honestly, it's when you start signing a ton of free agents, it means A, you missed the draft, and B, you still haven't developed enough players, but that's not the case anymore. They're drafting, developing so well since 2021. It's when really how we started to turn things around. And that's why that's why Sirianni's made the playoffs every year. There's a reason why Nick just signed this mega contract extension.
Right.
Draft well, develop well, sign the right free agents, and you're cooking.
Yeah. Man, if the Eagles, Adam, they don't have to win the Super Bowl every year. If they can avoid some of those epic collapses that they've had, like at the end of 2023 or even the 2020 season, if they can just, their worst season still be like 9-8 or 10 in this, then they will be, if they're not already, they're in that conversation with sort of the Steelers, the Ravens, the Packers, teams that just never bottom out. They may not win the Super Bowl all the time. It's been a while for the Packers, but the Packers are competitive and in the playoffs nearly every single year. The Steelers, we know they are. The Ravens, we know they are, right? That's some people have put the Chiefs in there, and they certainly have been since Andy got there, but they weren't before Andy got there. But they are now. They are that kind of team now. So that's the company you want to be in. And that's the company the Eagles find themselves in right now.
And they're so young. I mean, it's really it's funny. Never really looked at them as a young football team.
Yeah,
but they are. I mean, it's both sides of the football. I mean, defense even more. But that's the way to go, man. And the cool thing is that as we went through this exercise, they're going to be together most of the offense through by contract 2027. That's pretty good, man. They got this season and 2 more for a lot of these guys.
Yep.
So that's and the cool thing is, even with some of the older players, like as we mentioned, so Lane, we'll see what Lane wants to do, but you've got it also buys you time with a couple of the older players. If they continue to hang around, it gives you an opportunity to develop these guys behind the starters.
Awesome stuff. Great stuff. Hey, listen, it's going to be a great week on Inside the Birds. We're going to do the same podcast. We're going to do it from a defensive viewpoint this week. And we're going to have a special guest this week, just like we had one last week. Last week, we surprised our viewers with an awesome Inside the Birds podcast with the great Brandon Graham. And this week, we're going to have somebody else who's going to surprise our Inside the Birds viewers and listeners. So I'm really excited for that as well. So just make sure you're keeping in touch and staying tuned with what we got going on here on Inside the Birds.
By the way, this guy isn't retired.
He is not retired.
He's on the Eagles now. Yes,
he is on the Eagles. Player. Yeah, you'll have heard of him. He's a pretty good player.
Yeah,
and we're excited to have him on. That's enough teasing. You're gonna have to find out by listening to the episode. That's gonna do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the Birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.